This is 1941 hours GMT on Monday, the 10th of August 2020. Part one of this had a title caption that had the day as Saturday, which is a typographical mistake. It's Monday, of course, the 10th of August 2020. Part one, we started by holding this front page item in the East London Idiotizer, which circulates in Tower Hamlets mainly. And it's a free giveaway controlled by the Archant group, which is losing local newspaper circulation business rapidly, even before the onset of the coronavirus, because the quality of the local papers has been declining very rapidly and consistently for most of the years that since Archant took over, the likes of the East London Idiotizer and the Newham Recorder. The exclusive investigation into the corruption in London's Newham Council will be continued at a suitable time in the near future. We are delaying that because we are waiting for crucial fact checking, and we have given the administration fronted by elected Mayor Ruxana Fiaz another week, that is last week, to comply with the requirements to truthfully and fully and comprehensively answer the questions and deliver the damages owed to the party or parties that her lying council administration has wronged, robbed, denied, and lied to and lied about and defamed. So we shall continue the world exclusive investigation into the corrupt regime of Newham Council fronted by the elected Mayor Ruxana Fiaz. So that investigation will be broadcast on this channel and on related platforms in due course within the next few days, not weeks, few days, because the time that we gave the Newham Council in which to comply with the requirements to fully and truthfully and exhaustively answer the questions and start paying the damages they owe has been over already. But in fairness to some of the minions, some of the less paid and less kind of glorified holders in posts down the bureaucratic line, we are giving them extra few days in which to deliver the promised long overdue response and responsibilities. But Newham Council is not the only one that is under investigation by our campaign and by our supporters and our allies in the community and across London and in other parts of England. Tower Hamlets, as we have been showing, has councillors, elected councillors like this one. He's still in jail because that was in November 2019. So if it was 16 months for which he was jailed, then 16 months, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, it is just 10 months. So it is quite likely that he may be nearing release because the prison sentencing in this country works in a very illogical way. But that is a slightly different kind of angle. The main thing is the Town Hamlets Council is made of criminals. Not all of them, but made of people who are criminals. And this guy, Muhammad Harun, is actually a licensed law trader. When he was going to school or about to go to the Stepney School in Tower Hamlets, I was completing the campaign against the racists in control of that school. So if he got a better environment in that school, which enabled him to go on and do a necessary, quote, formal studies and course for enrollment as a certified or licensed law trader. Now that means he owes me something, because most of the racist attacks aimed at boys like him in that school in the 1980s resulted in a significant number of boys leaving school or staying away from school. And that is part of the problem that is linked with the upsurge of crime, knife crimes and black on black crimes and crimes among Asian youths, especially Bangladeshis in Tower Hamlets and in Newham. And we shall be discussing in detail the correlation between the criminals on the council and the criminality in the community that they supposedly democratically represent. Now, this Muhammad Harun and his crimes were perpetrated about housing in Tower Hamlets. And the housing corruption went on for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. So he got elected for the first time as a councillor on the 3rd of May 2018 from Lansbury. Lansbury, the council ward named after George Lansbury, one of the popular councillors who 99 years ago took up a position against the Tory crooks and corruption and stood up for the local electors with principle, to the point that they actually went to jail. Instead of obeying the Tory law, these councillors, collectively known as popular councillors, went to jail 99 years ago. So if they went to jail for principle, then it is not too much to expect that people who become councillors, who seek to be councillors, on a ward named after one of them, the leading councillor, if you like, of the popular councillor, George Lansbury, would at least remember not to be involved in crimes and thefts and whatever. Now, this guy, Harun, appears to have had a career for years before he even sought nomination from the Labour Party to become a councillor for the Lansbury ward. What does it say about the line of crime and criminality being allowed and pursued within the Labour Party en route to becoming councillors? Councillors in a council that has been in the news for the last 2 months about Robert Jenrick and the porn billionaire Dirty Desmond, about the West Ferry Road print works and the degenerate housing building for the rich that Jenrick gave permission to the billionaire, porn billionaire, to go ahead with, defying the local council, which was legally authorized and entitled to scrutinize the application by applying the supposedly quasi-judicial criteria of fitness and suitability and all the rest of it. All of this points to the fragility of that council, even if the likes of Jenrick don't defy it, even if the council is allowed to work without interference from the governments, bribed government, central government, the council is exposed to being abused by criminals inside, as happened with the exploitation of the youth service over many, many, many years. It was effectively taken over by gangs of criminals operating under the cover of certain of their members and their colluders and their stooges holding employed positions as youth service personnel in the council. So, even if the council is not being interfered with by the central government, the council is not reliable, cannot deliver the service the local community need and deserve and want and are entitled to deserve and want. Now, this is not a one-off mistake by Muhammad Harun. It is one of the cases of many councillors in Tower Hamlets who have been convicted of housing crimes. Now, for that council then to have any claim to be delivering the housing needs of the community is preposterous. It doesn't stand the basic scrutiny, because basically the council stands on a corrupt foundation. So nothing it does can be relied on or trusted. So this is the theme that we have been pursuing on everything about Britain, that in this channel we have been reporting and analyzing and covering. And the main consistent theme that covers the whole spectrum of state and authority is actually describable by one word or one combined word: cover-ups. And it applies to this councillor because the council did have a system whereby a fraudster could be taken to court after a very long number of years. But then there is no accountability as to why this person or a person of such criminal propensities and criminal record was able to come nominated as a councillor candidate and got elected as a councillor and then get appointed to various committees responsible for various allegedly serious decisions affecting the use or misuse of hundreds of millions of pounds of the budget of the council. So, contrasting the behavior of Muhammad Harun with the behavior of the racist braying on the English coast in Kent, in Dover, and Margate and other places in the south of England today, braying and bleating and making noise before the cameras or near the cameras or near the client reporters that there was an invasion taking place. We have to look at the facts, absolutely the facts, because the image being conjured up of these people is the image of Asians like Harun and others, or Africans. And if the gullible people watching the news on the racist television, the BBC, and others like Sky and ITV or even Channel 4, if they are allowed to watch these images without any break and without any actual explanation and any real distinction being made between the migrants and the settled Asians, then they can mistake subconsciously and after being subliminally brainwashed any ex-Asian with Y-Asian. Any Asian in the street is then becomes perfect target for vilification, attack, harassment, intimidation, or worse. And this is what Boris Johnson has been doing today. He has been fomenting hatred based on the identities of these people. So anyone, any racist apologist saying that people like Don Butler, who protest against being stopped and searched because they are seen as black people traveling in a nice car, that Don Butler is playing identity politics. Those people are wrong. It is them who are playing identity politics, because Don Butler was herself stopped because of identity politics being, or identity political agenda being employed and applied through the police force. So we have to be very careful about what we publicly hear and what we actually publicly say about society, because these statements and these images are circulated beyond our control once they are said, once they are posted. So Boris Johnson, when he went to a do in a location in east of London, in Essex this morning, Monday, the 10th of August, 2020, he had already in tow camera crews following him, and also simultaneously corresponding camera crews on the coast of England, the south coast of England, facing the channel that goes to France or comes from France, depending on what direction of the migrants we are talking about now. So there is a stage set up for the latest racist incitement theatrics, and he was not challenged. He was not disrupted, he was not interrupted, he was not questioned by Corbyn or Starmer. So who came to speak allegedly for the opposition? None other than Tony Blair's minister and former foreign minister, David Miliband, the elder Miliband of the two Milibrands, Ralph Miliband's two sons. Now, Ralph Miliband, as I said earlier in another broadcast, another edition, had some substance, but his sons have no substance. And David Miliband is now a multi-millionaire. He is based in New York, and from there he is doing the business of issuing plastic compassion. And today, his plastic compassion comes at the expense of the migrants, at the center of the hate campaign by Boris Johnson. Now, David Miliband was a part and parcel of the group of thugs in cabinet that decided to continue the war in Afghanistan and in other parts, including destabilizing Libya and eventually leading to the murder of Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, just as they murdered Saddam Hussein. Now, they had already set the agenda. They had already put their mind to murdering these two leaders. Now, anyone studying the consequences of the murders of Saddam Hussein and of Gaddafi would see that their murders have been followed by the murders of large numbers of innocent people in both Iraq and in Libya. Iraq particularly is very close to the heart of so many people across the world, because Iraq gave home and education and schooling to so many scholars and so many saints. And we shall come to the long-term damage and destruction that the war on Iraq has caused to long-term heritage and culture and learning and all the other things. So what we are saying here is that David Miliband is a war maker, is a warmonger. David Miliband is a causer of the migration, desperation, and homelessness, and massacre, and all the other things that wars cause. Wars, by definition, are intentional acts of collective madness by the human beings in charge of making the decision and igniting the flames of war. War is not a solution, and it has never been properly argued why wars are still allowed. And despite the fact that the United Nations was formed all those years ago, 72 years ago, the United Nations has failed to serve as a forum, real forum against war and war making. So today's tweets and social media issued by social media angst and solidarity with the migrants and the other refugees and young migrants, especially by the current Secretary General Antonio Guterres, is hollow, because the entire machinery of the United Nations bureaucracy is not geared to opposing the agenda and the narrative of wars. And Guterres is not vocal about that. He issues like a secondary level kind of priest, this minor expressions of concern and solidarity. He doesn't speak like the Secretary General of the United Nations, who just founded against having wars, who just founded for peace, who just founded to end wars and to support the environment and to stop the destruction of the planet Earth. So when Charlene White on the ITV, one of the ITV news presenters, tweets about the invasion by the French of England or Britain, she deserves to be followed up, and we have said that we shall be following up her tweet in these editions, and we are starting to do this here. Charlene, we said, has been spot on, but she has to go much further than what she said there. And the spot on tweet deserves to be followed up by an educated, action-linked narrative that actually explains why ITV, where she works, the migrants from Africa and the migrants from Asia, Muslim migrants and non-Muslim migrants are treated separately and differently. And why the ITV news organization today is carrying Boris Johnson and his anti-migrant, racist, ignorant incitement of hatred against migrants, and why the cause of migration is not being carried and explained and reported by ITV. What part does Charlene White play in choosing the agenda, the running order, the contents, the editorial contents? That is a question that, as an active employee in the ITV network, she is legitimately asked. And we are asking her that by noting favorably her tweet about the racists, about the migrants, but we are saying that the ITV has got more responsibility to tell the truth, to stop this tendency of lying for racists who describe migrants and immigration as the problem, the opposite of the truth. And she has to explain, not just herself, but she is one of the people on ITV who must explain why they are allowing this farrago of daily lies against migrants and immigrants to be carried on their mainstream channel, on every bulletin. And the narrative about imperialism, about war making, warmongering is never given any space. Doesn't Charlie and White agree that that should be the case? That opposition to war and war making should become part of the main agenda of news. I broadcast that slot on Channel 4 News after the end of the 7 o'clock news on a date in January 1992. And I said that migrants would come from Africa and Asia, and the West would be overwhelmed. And I said 28 years ago that the British governments and the British businesses, Western businesses, should seriously start looking at and involving in solving poverty and hunger and wars in the countries of origins of the migrants. Does Charlie and White have the facilities to check what I said in January 1992? If she has, she should check it. If she doesn't, she should let us know. And we are very public. We can be contacted by public means, by Twitter, by Facebook, and by these broadcasts. Where is the excuse for the British government, the Western government, the British business, the Western businesses not paying heed to what I said 28 years ago? That the best, the most economic, and the most competent and economical way to stop migration big time was to solve the problem of hunger, poverty, and famine and war in the countries of origin. And we shall stop this one at 8 minutes past 8 GMT on Monday, 10th of August 2018. Until the next edition.